Because it's all about creation. It's all about self-expression, really, when it boils down to it.
Arrested Development, Atlanta, Georgia, active since 1988. Today's feature is the story of a multi-talented group of artists that came together organically in the late 80s and 90s that were known for their unique representation of the Black and African culture and lifestyle music infused with jazz and soul of the American South, who provided an alternative to the gangster rap popular at the time. Alternative to gangster rap, but not alternative at all to hip-hop, but in addition to what hip-hop was showing it could evolve into. It wasn't as in-your-face revolution like a Public Enemy or N.W.A, but it still pushed the fundamental values of expressing yourself, being who you are, and remembering to stay rooted as an everyday person, just like everyone else, no matter your financial blessings or lack thereof. Hip-hop started in New York, and they had their rise. The West Coast at one point challenged their reign and grew to have a voice as well. But the South were still looking for their opportunity to speak throughout the competitive 90s, and Arrested Development were one of the foundational rap groups to help push a voice for the South that opened the doors for many more to come in. In 1993, they won 2 Grammy Awards for Best Rap Performance by a Duo or Group and Best New Artist after the success of their first album and the lead 4 songs that built the stage for the group to have the start they did. That being songs like Tennessee, People Every Day, and Mr. Wendell, in addition to Revolution from the Malcolm X motion picture soundtrack directed by Spike Lee. They were the first ever hip-hop group to win a Grammy Award for Best New Artist, and since there hasn't been a traditional group to win said award at the Grammys, not including Macklemore and Ryan Lewis, who are considered a group but as performer and producer. Their debut album 3 Years, 5 Months, and 2 Days in the Life of, which is still one of the dopest album titles ever, stood for the length of time it took the group to get a record contract, went over 6 times platinum, and made them the face of what ignited Southern hip-hop groups. In 92 and 93, they were the biggest thing in Southern rap and one of the biggest acts in hip-hop period for a very brief moment, because after their first album and almost immediate mainstream success, things changed drastically when members began to feel they needed more for their role in the situation, from Speech and Headliner having ownership issues, to Speech and Dionne Farris having a fight that led to her quitting the group right before a headlining show at the Fox Theater in Atlanta, and the eventual breakup of the group that all but broke the foundation of what they had built. They should have been one of the biggest groups of all time in hip-hop, but for these reasons, that didn't happen. Let's talk about it. Salute to Terry Rux on IG for this request. It's your boy JC, Stunted Growth Music. Let's get it, man. Take a minute to like, subscribe, and comment on who I should do next. Arrested Development, the rap group, was created by rapper and producer Speech from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, who moved to Atlanta in '87 to attend the Art Institute there when he placed a flyer at school looking for a DJ to create a group with. Headliner, a DJ originally from New Jersey, was also attending the same school, picked up the flyer, and while reading it, Speech walked up, introduced himself, and the two instantly connected, became friends, and began working together locally to push the group. It started as a community thing where any artist of any form of art could hang around and add to the vibes at the time, from dancers to spoken word artists, musicians, and all colorful people. They signed with Chrysalis Records and released their first song Tennessee to much fanfare and appreciation for a different option of mainstream hip-hop, and were off to a race that went the distance, as they're still active today, but along the way, speed bumps altered the original group and held them back from continued success as they were. Stunt number 1, Internal Disagreements. As you could probably imagine, with fame and success mixed with people having to share them, there will always be the possibility of disagreements amongst a group. Well, that's initially what happened to Arrested Development. Me personally, I don't think they as a whole ever expected they would immediately become as big as they were that soon, to where they were platinum in 4 different countries and had sold 4 million records in just America alone. with only Speech and Headliner signed directly to the label and the rest of the acts workers for hire, things became contentious from the bottom all the way to the top, as they all felt they were giving important pieces to what made the group who they were. For example, you couldn't tell N.W.A. her vocals on their song People Every Day wasn't just as important as Headliner's role, who was likely paid more than she was, being one of the founding members, or Donnie Ferris at the End of Tennessee didn't help make that one of their biggest songs ever. So while they were still blowing up after the success of their first album, touring and doing interviews and other promotion, behind the scenes the group was falling apart. Headliner and Speech even engaged in their own battle for ownership, with Headliner requesting he owned 50% of the group, feeling it was created with Speech at the same time. He'd eventually sue Speech, and they would later settle on a 60-40 split of everything. The internal beef between them all backstage set the tone and started the clock to a ticking time bomb that would hurt their potential forever. Some of their biggest shows would be followed as close as 5 minutes before hitting the stage, with internal fighting and even chairs being thrown backstage because of roles not clearly being defined. That all was the beginning to the eventual end, only the fans didn't see it coming so soon. Stunt number 2, their third album, flopped. 1992 was a huge year for Arrested Development, delivering a home run album on their first attempt, and 93 capped it off well with their recognition from the Grammys and other places. That year, they attempted to capitalize off that success quickly by returning with their unplugged live album, which some don't consider an official album, that went gold, released March 93, but technically was their sophomore album. Over a year after its release and more than 2 years after their debut award-winning release in 92, they came back with the album Zingalamaduni, and it just wasn't received the same way as the first, actually nowhere near the same success. By then, there was good reason. As Speech recalls an interview with Vlad TV, around that time, things became much more corporately structured for the group, as in for most of the members, their heart wasn't necessarily in it anymore, more than they were only doing it for the money at that point, with every member basically having their own separate camps behind them, from managers to personal assistants and even family members now tagging along to fight for their piece of the huge pie Arrested Development found themselves making. There was no more heart and soul of creativity, not much communication, and a lot of hidden negativity amongst the group creating a project. None of the songs actually connected to the people because of this, and the album flopped tremendously compared to the industry standard at the time and the bar Arrested had set for themselves. They were no longer in the right space mentally and direction-wise to make the greatness that came prior to, when they were still hungry and less money was involved. Stunt number 3, the breakup. This entire story thus far was leading up to what you may have guessed or already know, the breakup. With everything said, you could imagine how this would play out, as being in a group in entertainment is one of the most difficult things to do, especially when big money is being made and not everyone has received or are even entitled to an equal share. Deon Ferris left the group early in September 1992 while backstage and about to perform when she, Headliner, and Speech got into an argument that led to her allegedly throwing a chair at Speech. Losing her was important, but by 1996, the group had broken up completely, with Speech accepting a solo deal on Chrysalis and everyone else going solo as well. Speech wouldn't be able to match the success of the group as a solo artist, even though his music became very popular in a place like Japan. They attempted to put things back together with new members in 2000, but by that time the conscious rap sound had all but disappeared in favor of the mafioso, shiny suit mainstream push of hip-hop, not to mention gangster rap making a small comeback. N.W.A. didn't return due to vocal problems, Headliner left to start his own music company, and Deon Ferris had solo success going her own way. Speech took it the hardest because as the face of the group, the flop and breakup fell on him, losing his band and not being able to keep things going group-wise or solo. He even thought about ending it all at one point, feeling the rug was pulled from under he and the group. All in all, Arrested Development were important to the culture, especially Southern hip-hop, by showing a different side of what rappers were at the time. They opened the doors for a group like Outkast and other conscious Southern-based groups with their debut album and movement. They had a great thing, but it ended too soon because they didn't know how to handle it all and it was taken away. Salute, much respect, but for these reasons, their growth was stunted. It's your boy JC, Stunted Growth Music, and I'm out.